Welcome to M1 Plus Programming 101. To open M1 Plus, you first need to install the M1 Plus software and insert an M1 Plus license. Once you've done this, you can go over to your M1 Plus icon and double click. When M1 Plus opens, to create a new file, you may go to File, New Pattern, and name your pattern. We will name this Swatch A. Also choose your machine. You may do this by clicking on the little file, going to list stole machines, and selecting your machine. In this case, the machine we're working with is an 822 HP 5, and it is, if we go down here, Setup 2 is what we want for the more modern version, and we want 7.2. This is a 14 gauge machine with a 10 gauge needle setup. If we want to move this to my favorite machines, we can right click and left click on Setup My Machine. This will move it to My Machine, so you automatically see it there, and it will automatically pop up when you go to File, New Pattern. Click OK. This brings us back to our new pattern page. Here in Type of Pattern, we select our pattern type. We want a design pattern because we want to be able to process our pattern. Technical pattern will not have steps of processing, which we will learn in just a little bit. We want to select this rectangle because we are just starting out with a swatch. If we wanted to knit a garment, we could select one of these options, but as we are using this for more technical applications, this is how we want to start our pattern off with. Now here you see we can select our wales. So I'm going to start off with just 10 wales by 10 courses. I'll start out with a front stitch with transfer. Over here with our start, I'm going to select comb, modules, and I am going to do this without elastic yarn, and I'm going to select 1 by 1. Over here we do not want stitch doubling. Here we see our starting width, our wales are 10, just like we put here. If we were to change that number, it would also change here, but we're going to start off with 10, and we're going to set our global pattern parameters to allocate automatically. So once we've selected all of this, we're going to generate the design pattern. You should come up with something that looks like this. This is our symbol view, basic view. To look at our steps of processing that show us we're in basic view, go to View, Toolbars, Steps of Processing. This square right here represents basic view. This is technical processing. It expands the entire pattern. Over here is final processing. If we were to expand our program without having to process it, we could click here, and that will allow us to select our same pattern, but we're able to look at it expanded, and we can see the transfer rows that are in our knitting. These transfers happen because this stitch module, it has a transfer in it. If we went to View, Open Fabric View, we could look at a fabric representation. Now we cannot do this in our basic view. I had to expand it first, click on the expanded version, and then go to View and look at the expanded fabric view. If I wanted to look at the technical view, I could also click on that, and now I can see a loop diagram representation of what is happening. If I right click on my technical view, I can ask it to show my needle assignment, where it will highlight where I have needles knitting. You You see here we're just transferring, but those gray highlights represent where loops are hanging on to the needles. Where you don't see them, that means there is nothing knitting on those needles. So we'll close our control views and refer back to our basic view. So if it's confusing to you why all of these are transfer stitches, yet it only transfers on the first one, you can select a stitch module that's knitting on the front bed without transfer. There's no difference between the initial pattern and what I just did now. If I were to expand it, it would look exactly the same. Right now, the way we're knitting it, this is from here to here is one system. Now I just selected that by using the selector column. I can select rows, I can click insert or edit insert and click selection, add rows. I can also add columns by selecting the columns and clicking insert and add selection, add columns. So now I've just added 2 rows to my pattern, and I've added 2 wales to my pattern as well. If I were to go to yarn feeder allocation, which is F4, I would see the body of my pattern represented by this yellow feeder, the color that I allocated there. Now I also have some protection rows before my draw thread and my rib after. So all these 3 feeders can all be one. All I need to do is choose which one I want to combine. I've selected feeder 3A. If I hover over that and F5, F6 or Control copy, and then hover over the feeder that I want to combine it with, and click, it becomes 3A. I also want to do this to the rows previous. Click escape, and there you have it. All those 2 feeders just combined into that one. This one is my draw thread feeder. Right before my knitting begins, I'll be removing that, and everything below it will come off. 2, you don't see anything highlighted because 2 is using the Nylastic. Okay, so you can close out, save your changes, and if that's what you wanted, if that's all you wanted to knit is a little bit of front bed single jersey, you can click on your processing. Make sure you save it as an MDV file. And you can see that it's knitting some automatic safety rows. And if you were to right click on this column, select columns, and select your carriage direction, your system, your stitch length, cycles, you can see that M1 Plus has automatically allocated stitch lengths, systems, and directions. And you can see that it's only knitting one system. Now you might say, wait a minute, this says S1 and that says S4. That simply means that it's knitting the system closest to the left when it's, the system furthest from the left when it's going to the left, because that's the 4th one, and then the first feeder when it's going, the first system when it's going to the right. If you have any questions on that, please see me. But this is knitting solely one feeder in one system at a time in each pass. So to make sure that we're ready to knit, we can run our central check, which is the icon in the lower right of your steps of processing. You can see everything's okay. It's 1 minute and 8 seconds. If we're ready to knit this on the machine, you can go to MC Program, Extract Program. Then you can choose which device you'd like to save it onto. And make sure that Jacquard, Central, and Setup are checked. If you have any other option, leave that unchecked. And OK. And that is, from start to finish, just a brief rundown on how to start your pattern.